I'm going to jump in these recordings up to chapter 15, entitled The Common Cold. The reason I'm doing it is because at the time that I'm recording this, there's a so-called virus pandemic exercise being carried out by most of the governments that we know, or whoever runs them. And there isn't a chapter entitled viruses, but I thought one called The Common Cold, as it's seen to be a virus type thing, might be useful to hear in case people are seeking information on ways that people may have remedied flu in the past. So, without further ado, chapter 15, The Common Cold. It is not extravagant to say that the simple malady we call an ordinary common cold has baffled the profession for centuries. A doctor once said to the writer, "If there is one thing I dislike being asked to cure, it is a common or garden cold in the head." The late Dr. Haig, who first drew attention to uric acid, aid beaters still to the folly of living on an unbalanced diet, though on certain points one might differ from him, told people they should be thankful when they contracted a streaming cold, as it acted as a species of house cleaning, and therefore should never be suppressed. But unfortunately for mankind at large, very often the first thing most persons do immediately when they begin to feel a cold coming on is to buy something to stop it and, quote, nip it in the bud. This is not curing it, it is merely suppressing it and frustrating nature. The suppression of a simple cold often leads to worse afflictions, such as pneumonia, etc. The cause of colds is as simple as colds themselves are common. It lies in an unbalanced diet, and as the majority of people live on unbalanced diets, the majority of people are thus in varying degrees susceptible to colds. Excess of starch in a diet combined with a deficiency of fullis, I don't know what this word is, containing the essential mineral salts is productive of catarrh. The exudations in catarrhal conditions should in themselves be quite sufficient to indicate to us the real cause of catarrh. Their nature is starchy. Moreover, just as the cause of a cold must be obvious, so must be its cure, as I have found through years of observation and experience. The procedure is to fast on cold water and self-urine only. No medicaments, whether in the form of lozenges or potions, must be taken. If this treatment is carried out, the cold will disappear in the case of otherwise healthy individuals in about 12 hours or less. Doubtless the reader will say, but this is quite contrary to the old adage, feed a cold and starve a fever. Yet was that the original adage? I have heard it said that such is merely a perversion of the original saying, which was, if you feed a cold, you'll have to starve a fever. Even a fast on cold water only will cure a cold in anything from 24 to 48 hours. But this is less effective than the cold water and self-urine treatment, which not only results in the rapid disappearance of the catarrhal condition, but the victim feels much better in every way than prior to the visitation. Moreover, which is very important, it prevents the development of influenza, pneumonia, etc., which when once developed may in some cases need at least a fast of 10 days and much care and nursing. And yet influenza, pneumonia, bronchitis, and kindred ailments may be merely the more immediate results of suppressing nature's attempts to get rid of an excess of starch and its evils. Indeed, it is my conviction that suppressed colds are the most fruitful and common basis of a long list of major diseases. Coryza, as it is technically called, i.e. the inflammation of the mucous membrane of the nose, should be regarded as a blessing in disguise, for it is, so to say, the alarm bell which announces that the interior needs a cleansing process. And I would here stress, at the risk of repetition, that nothing performs this office so quickly, easily, and actively as the intake of every drop of one's own urine while fasting, even if the passing and intake of that urine is up to 20 pints in the 24 hours of a fast. As to chronic nasal catarrh, those people who live on an unbalanced diet should be thankful for this safety valve, which may prevent them from developing far more serious ailments. Those who attempt to suppress it by unnatural means may have to face serious consequences. Its cause is to be found in the habitual consumption of too much bread, especially white, of buns, scones, polished rice puddings, porridge, biscuits, especially made of white flour, and other starch foods. Where these ailments preponderate in a dietary, it also involves a deficiency in those foods rich in the essential mineral salts. To say that sugars and starch give energy is one of those pernicious half-truths which are nearly as misleading as a 100% error. An excess of starch cannot give energy. It merely clogs the system and inhibits its normal functioning. The proof is that people who live mostly on the aliments I have enumerated have constantly to resort to alcoholic beverages or cups of tea to buck themselves up. As I always like to substantiate my contentions with scientific reasons for the benefit of those who like the I's dotted in this manner, I may add that apart from an excess of starch being the cause of catarrh, there is in the tissues a deficiency of chloride potash, phosphate of lime, and sulfate of lime, and if the throat is infected, of phosphate of iron. See Biochemic Pocketbook by E. F. W. Powell, D.Sc. In recent times, researchers have occupied themselves with the analysis of various foods in order to ascertain their mineral salts content. As a result of this, we find that some foods are richer in one or other salt than other foods. Thus, the aliments have been tabulated under such headings as carbon foods, calcium foods, chlorine foods, fluorine foods, sodium foods, potassium foods, phosphorus foods, sulfur foods, etc., etc. As all these salts have now been found to be essential to the proper functioning of the body, such research only serves again to show how necessary it is to live on a varied and well-balanced diet. It is significant that until recently the medical profession ignored potash, as a salt of any importance to the human body, and yet it has since been discovered by exponents of the biochemic system that a deficiency in one or other forms of potash is a contributing cause in most diseases, especially in cancer and growths. Nevertheless, this was already discovered by Dr. Schussler of Oldenburg, Germany, in the latter half of the last century, yet it was only brought into greater prominence in 1912 by Dr. Forbes Ross, already mentioned, who had probably never even heard of Dr. Schussler or of his momentous but largely ignored discovery. In his general sketch of the biochemic system of medicine, G.W. Carey, M.D., significantly points out that a lack of any of the inorganic cell salts will set up certain symptoms which are merely nature's method of indicating that one or more of the vital workers of the body are absent and must be supplied. Quote, each mineral salt has a special work to do. Each has an affinity for certain organic materials used in building up the human frame. Thus, Kali-Mur, chloride of potash, molecules work with fibrin. If a deficiency occurs in this salt, a portion of the fibrin not having inorganic salt to unite with becomes a disturbing element and may be thrown out of the vital circulation through the nasal passages or lungs, producing conditions called catarrhs, colds, coughs, etc. Here, then, we have the biochemic explanation of colds, a kindred ailment such as leukorrhea, the whites, which when the discharge is milky white indicates a deficiency of chloride of potash in the female organism. carry. I think I have now produced sufficient evidence to show that the common cold, together with all catarrhal conditions, whether acute or chronic, is primarily the result of wrong feeding, on which I shall enlarge in a later chapter.